Hello there, it's me, Steve Mellor, and welcome in to GrowthReady, the podcast that allows high performers to reveal the reality behind what it means to ready yourself for growth, the personal and professional challenges along the growth journey, while also allowing the high performance executive coach in me to satisfy his curiosity toward what drives optimal performance. On this episode, we are excited to welcome Robert X. Fogarty, the founder of Dear World and global keynote speaker. And as you're about to learn, his entire story is filled with an appetite for growth and understanding that all growth will ensure that you're ready for anything and everything that is to come. Mr. Robert X. Fogarty, I am so excited to have the opportunity not only to be interviewing you, not only you have educated me to let me know that this may in fact be your first ever podcast, but to have the opportunity to come and do it inside the Mary Beth Hotel and bring some awesome attention to this fantastic place that I've been fortunate enough to visit before too. So, brother, before we get into all of that and I start to introduce you more and you introduce us to who you are, I'd love for you to answer this question. What does it mean to you to be growth ready?
Oh, man. Well, I was listening to your podcast, Steve. Thanks for having me on. It is the first, maybe second, but we'll call it the first. Man, for me, it's funny. In New Orleans, I always tell people you got to have your head on a swivel. Mm. So I think that there's a metaphor there, which is to be growth ready. The idea of having your head on a swivel is to just be aware of your surroundings. So for me to be growth ready is just to be curious and aware of your surroundings.
Curiosity,
or my surroundings,
awareness of your own surroundings, and having seen you actually on stage before when I was here in April at a conference, and watching you walk an entire room of no fewer than maybe 3,000, 4,000 people, something like that. It was a huge audience. Walk through with them the art of storytelling and the impact of storytelling. And so I wanted to start with your story. When you think about where you are today, where does the story of Robert X. Fogarty really start? Like where how did you become, what's the origin of how we got to where we are today?
Super easy, man. 3 blocks that way. Mm-hmm. Joined AmeriCorps right after Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. Tulane was the program. They put us up in the medical school dorms, literally, like, you'd see them at these buildings right there. Yeah. And I got placed at City Hall, which you can see from this window. Mm-hmm. Changed my life. I was like 22 right after the storm. And first time it's cliche, but I felt super needed. Mm-hmm. It was a time when if anyone raised their hand, someone would be like, yeah, come in, help out. We need you. So it was I tell people I came of age in New Orleans. I mean, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, but I really came of age here. And the irony of sitting in a hotel that I named after my mom, who had only stepped foot in New Orleans one time on her honeymoon, right, is now in the shadow of, the place that really shaped me. Yeah. Is really cool. It is. It's super cool. So I think a lot of my life I owe to city of New Orleans and that time, coming of age, your early 20s, and to feel needed is something that a lot of people don't ever get. Right. But it's really special when you feel needed and your skill sets actually line up with what the needs are. And yeah, I was really lucky that all happened when I was 22, sure, 23. Sure. So I'm 41 now. Yeah,
so we're talking, this almost 20-year lifespan now of the origin of that to where you are now. Talk to me a little bit about that feeling of being needed. So what was the value? What was the offering that you were able to give to people that they needed?
Well, I think there was one thing, quite tactically, just bodies who were able to show up and work. Were tremendously important tremendously important during recoveries, after disasters, so there was a little bit of an element of just coordination. And I was, a volunteer in service through a federal program. Mm-hmm. But it was also at a time when the city just needed people. to be involved. So kind of quite tactically, I was able to, I think, grow into my skill set. I didn't come down here with much of a skill set other than, being reasonably, college educated and smart. And, but I think I grew into my skill set, which I still use today, which is just being super curious about the people around me and making them feel at home, welcome. I'm also not scared to like ask the funny question or the hard question or the and I learned a lot of that because I was a mayor's community aide. And I was answering the city hall switchboard. And so you can imagine I just got thrown into many difficult situations because most mayors are unpopular, which is kind of a part, but the mayor I worked for was very unpopular, and it was a very tumultuous time in the city. And I just learned to get like screamed at a lot. And it's a really good skill to be able to hang in when people are just need to unload on someone.
Right.
And they, a lot of times were unloading on me.
Right.
Over the phone or in community meetings.
Which is fascinating. Like learning that now, it's fascinating to think about what you're doing now, because so much of the art of storytelling and the ability to get across really how you feel, the emotions around it, it's actually going through the work to process that. Actually saying, hey, I'm actually all this emotion that I have, or all these visuals that I can paint around this story that I'm trying to tell, for whatever reason I can't maybe put it on a path, give it direction, put the reins on it. And here you were at a time when New Orleans has gone through an absolute disaster of the biggest and greatest kind. To come out of that and to be someone who's having to now somehow work with, communicate with these folks that are in no place to be rational, right? At all. And
my gosh. And yeah, so I really credit a lot of everything I do now is because I got thrown in. I mean, I moved here calling it New Orleans. As y'all know, it's New Orleans.
Right.
And I get here on a Saturday. And I'll never forget, I got off I-10, was going up to Carrollton, going uptown to Tulane. And for those of you who aren't in New Orleans, it's a magical and majestic place that I had never been to. I had all these preconceived notions about what I was going to be doing. And just remember the trees hanging over Carrollton Avenue, where you couldn't even see the sky. The trees were so beautiful and big, and like this thoroughfare to Tulane. And I was just like, man, this place is wild. And then he was like, you got to go to work on Monday, brother, at City Hall. My service coordinator was at Tulane, but they farmed us all out to community organizations. So I was with the mayor of New Orleans. So like Monday morning, I get here on a Saturday. Monday morning, I'm answering the City Hall switchboard.
Right.
15 months after Hurricane Katrina, deep in the recovery. That there's many phases, but that was in the angsty. People were mad. Their neighbors' houses had 15 feet of grass. They hadn't seen him in 2 years. They're calling the city, being like, you got to start fining these owners who just left. Those were the kind of problems that I was just walked into, being like, I don't even know where I'm at, and I'm like looking at a directory trying to figure out what safety and permits, what's parks and parkways. So man, it is just wild to look out this window and see City Hall, right? Because I put so much time there.
But it's
so much time.
It's clearly so formative for you.
Absolutely.
It's just so formative. And I think 22, 23 years old, what's really interesting is it didn't discourage you.
No, bro. I love
that's what I'm
pressure.
saying. That's fascinating to me.
The pressure is where I thrive. This is what I realized. Some people, I thrive in chaos, man. I thrive in high stakes, which I don't think I actually knew until I came to New Orleans. I was always good, but not great at everything. Went to a good state school, but I was always good, not great. I was a B plus, A, my whole life. I was just good, but not great. And I feel like New Orleans forced me into situations that just were normal civil society. I thought I was just going to have a job and like whatever. Like the hierarchies were broken here. It really was like, yo, you got an idea?
Right.
Like, let's go. I mean,
yeah.
And so it was a very formative time in my life to like have the stakes. Like I was doing things that I was not qualified to be doing.
Right.
But I was reasonably smart. My boss started to trust me, and that she started to just giving me more and more opportunity to go represent the mayor out in the community. And it was just like the stakes just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger of like being an attaché for the mayor.
Yeah.
Negotiating hard feeling, like, you know, with community members. Like a lot of my work was with like neighborhood associations and their presidents and very impressive people. You know, they're lawyers and doctors and they're they were their committee chairman of the blight committees and all these things. And so I'm like, I was in way over my head. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
It's like so fun.
Right.
If you're not over your head, like for me, it's like, if you don't have butterflies in your stomach, it's like, it's hard to get out of bed, you know?
And I think that's such an important message to get across, is like for you to just acknowledge in that moment. Because I am really interested, like here, I'm assuming you were one of many, and yet you were immersing yourself more in the chaos. You were allowing the chaos to sort of happen to you and then sort of thrive within it.
Yeah.
Did you notice then that maybe you were an exception in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is like in those times, it felt like everyone was just in this rocky boat together, and some people really wanted to get off, but they couldn't.
Right.
They were stuck. If you're a citizen and you're metaphorically underwater in your home that was and you can't, like there was just so many people who probably wanted to, but they had to fight it out here.
Yep.
And rebuild a city. Yep. And so I was playing with house money too, you know. I was like, not from here. I was only providing upside, and it's a cliche, but like New Orleans, like volunteer service work does more for the person that serves than it often does for the community that we like evangelize. It's a funny, I'm a net positive, way more of like what New Orleans did for me than like what I did for New Orleans, for sure.
Right.
Because I was making a ton of mistakes. Yeah. But I was afforded the opportunity to learn, you know, which was really cool. So, but yeah, like chaos junkies, or pressure junkies, I think are a little, you know, they're in every. Yep. I mean, you're a hyper competitive athletes are like, you got to put your. I mean, yeah, it's that feeling of chasing exception.
Yes.
Exceptionality, being exceptional, being extraordinary in just different forms.
Yeah, and something you're hitting there, I think is so important, is that it's a perspective that only those that have it can explain and understand. Like it is unique. It is so unique, and I think something that I hope people are hearing here is like at the heart of who you were at that time and who you were becoming. You were leaning into that. You were leaning into that. Speak more to that. Had to.
Well, listen, I mean, when you're 22, and I started to realize, listen, I'm not going to say I'm but like we all feel special in our own ways.
Sure.
And I was like, God damn, I didn't go to Harvard. Like I started, doing what a lot of kids do. They compare themselves to others and start to why me. Why didn't I get the internship? Why didn't I get the, it's like went 0 for 10 on like whatever, like all those things. And I was just like, this sucks, Yeah. I applied for like whatever, these impressive things and, and it like, you just basically don't have to be a felon to join the AmeriCorps. Right. It's like, there's Teach for America, there's Peace, there's all these like fancy ones that the Harvard kids, and by the way, some of my best friends are now like very prestigious people. Sure. They're not the B+ A- kids. They're the A++ kids get that. So I was also kind of naive in thinking I could even compete in a thing that has rubrics. Right. Guess like entrepreneurship And these things, like, you get to create the game yourself.
That's right.
You don't have other people telling you whether you're smart enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's when stuff started to change for me.
Mm.
And that's when people like Clarice Kirkland were like, we believe in you.
Yeah.
You go into these rooms and people listen to you. They trust you. They believe in you.
Right.
And I was getting gassed up by a lot of these people in New Orleans who were just like, took me under their wing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that's helpful, because it's like, that's really for me, when I decided to stop letting other people tell me if I was smart enough,
Mm-hmm.
was when things started to click in the formal way, like fellowships and internships. And I just came to a place where it's like, yo, you're smart. You want to show up on Monday at 8:00.
Yeah.
And just the rest is history.
Right.
For like, literally, I haven't looked back.
Right. And
it's the only job I've ever had. That's the only actual job I've ever had. Like,
right. And I can't wait to get to that.
I'm eminently unemployable.
Right.
I'm also
I
realizing
have
that.
a number of entrepreneurial friends that will say the same. I'm slowly becoming that too.
Yeah,
like that was me about 3 years ago. I was like, is that me? And then now I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's me. But something that you are saying, you shouldn't question whether or not that's like making sense, because it's going to be resoundingly making sense with a lot of people.
Yeah. And also I love, oh, my bad.
Well, no, I'm just going to say, like, it's the notion of if I don't see myself as a square, how can I possibly fit into this box? And you're saying, well, forget the box. Forget the way the box was made. Forget the fact you're even a square. Like, just be the shape you want to be and go out and create the shape you want to fit it.
I also love that a lot of people are like, no, I'm square and that box fits perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's when there's just some people who there, and they love that. And by the way, I love being first and in chaos, but I have a whole team of people who are like, no, I want to put the puzzles in the right pieces. And I'm like, this puzzle sucks. Let's start another one.
Right.
They're like, no, we haven't finished this one yet.
Yes.
Like, and you have to.
Yes.
We as humans, we have to rely on each other. We have to find the right skill sets. You know this as team members, man. There's the best teams have in my opinion, they have the stars, but they also need the walk-ons who just push them. Mm-hmm. They'll never beat them in a race. Mm-hmm. But guess what? They're going to get. That's what I love about team dynamics.
That's right.
And I've always loved in collegiate athletics, I love the kids at the end of the bench who get in at the end of the games and basketball games, because they're working their tails off, and they're just as every month. They have a role. They have a role to play, and for me, like, culture and building team, like, not everyone can be the guy.
Right.
That's why it was so funny to watch the Olympics, and Jason Tatum really struggled. 2-time MVP, just won the NBA, but he had to sit behind LeBron James and Kevin Durant, and to watch how people navigate. And I watched him. I think he did it with grace and elegance and the stuff of, like, being the guy, literally, who just won the league championship, getting do not plays, and just getting up to the microphone and being like, "Coach," And
I know my role. Yeah,
and it was cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
So,
and I want to get to team culture. So much of the work that you're doing now in the world of working with businesses, executives, we are getting to that. And I want to really now come to this main transition for you when, as you said, you start here in New Orleans around 05, 06. You start to work your way through. You come out of the chaos, and you suddenly find an opportunity where this fairly unique thing happens for you. And I would love for you, of all the stories I was excited for you to share today, I really want you to share this story of just how the concept of Dear World came about, the origin of those initial moments.
Yeah. I'll try and do it as quickly as I can. I mean, I was a journalism major in college. I was writing about the city. New Orleans, like, captivated me in ways that I'd just never been captivated before. Mm-hmm. Like, and for those of you who are listening, people either love New Orleans or they hate it. There's no in between. And I just, like, fell in love. Like, I had, like, this deep love affair, because I was also just being put in these wild situations where it was, as a 23, I mean, we were partying hard. We were working hard. we were like, who is this crazy musician dude? Like, and then I would like, it was just an overload of like sensory human experiences, good and bad, like super painful for people and super like New Orleans is a place that just does joy and pain really beautifully.
Yeah.
And I just think the most interesting people the most joyful people in my experience have gone through great pain and they've come on the other side.
Yeah.
And the city's like the city to me is a character of that.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many interesting people in New Orleans.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So I was writing about the city. The Saints won the Super Bowl about 5 years after the storm. I've been here. I've been staffing the mayor for 3 years. I've been writing about the city. First started asking people to write why they love New Orleans. The company's still called Dear New Orleans. Like we still get our checks to Dear New Orleans LLC. They were writing and I was photographing, very like bumper stickery things like Hoodad and New Orleans is, lullabies are my streetcar and, streetcars are my lullaby. I love that. They were just like beautiful New Orleans things that I'd ask them to write and I'd photograph them with black marker on their body. And then a guy wrote cancer free, like early in the process. He's like, I know we're like supposed to do this thing or writing why we love New Orleans. And he's like, hey man, can I do something different? And comes back with cancer free in his throat and he's crying and his wife is like holding, and I'm like, I'm just also super junior creative at that point, like I was just like, God, I hope I get this in focus. Like,
yeah.
And he's crying. He's like, and this dude's name's Ralph Surpass, Rebecca and Ralph Surpass. Like, they changed the like I knew that night that this was no longer Dear New Orleans. It was Dear World. It took me a little longer. It took me nothing, but I knew that night. I knew that night it was
bigger than New Orleans.
And then I just kept getting some good breaks, man. The ball kept bouncing my way, and I'm super stubborn, and they were beautiful, and I like positioned it correctly, and just took every opportunity I could to get in front of the right people. Just like hustle. Yep. Like within a year, man, we went from like dollars in a tip bucket to like keynoting big conferences, and I got a shout out like many of my event planner clients in New Orleans, and people were like, yo, you're like kind of charismatic. Have you ever thought about like talking? And then one lady was like, you should photograph the attendees after you talk. She was like, wouldn't it be cool if, and she was the one who put it together.
Right.
And so I've been riding that little niche in the marketplace for 15 years and a million photos later and a million participants later. And like one of the, like, yeah, bro, we go up against some of the biggest speakers in the world who are often authors or fighter pilots, and they all have roles, but we win a lot of gigs because it's like, I don't sit and sign books afterwards. I bring photo crews and so I photograph personally. Yeah. God, maybe if we've done it, maybe like 50, 75,000 people. Not just photographing them, like writing their message on their body and then photograph. Like, so I've like looked into the eyes of like lots of people after these experiences, and it feels real. Like, and people have come out through Dear World. People have like met in line and got married. People have like tattooed their message. Like, you name it, they've done it. So I'm just over here legit, still feel 23, answering phones at City Hall, haven't looked back, Yeah. And the Mary Beth now is a testament to my love of New Orleans. And a testament to like pretty good entrepreneur, like I was able to like build a profitable business, artistic business. I have just enough like crazy artists with just enough like rational, logistical, just enough to be dangerous.
The right balance. Right balance.
Not the right balance. But you should ask. Most people will be like, not the right balance. Work for me. I have just enough.
That's where you make all the other moves with all the people you surround yourself with. For sure. But I had never, when I saw you speak in April, I'd never heard of the world. I'd seen a few pictures, and I was like, I never really thought twice about how it could have possibly been part of a larger movement. Totally. And then you start to listen to it and you learn about it, and you just go, my goodness, like this is hearing now more of how you arrived and some of those early years, formative years in New Orleans. Something about the discovery of Dear World and the way it's grown, it aligns so beautifully. Like, it's
Deep.
incredible. Like,
There's no business plan, bro. This
right.
was not,
That's what I'm saying.
This was not cooked up in an MBA
this
course.
is so important for people to hear, because you are a testament sometimes to, like you said, we've both referenced that already. Like, there are some people that it's like, hey, for me to make step 5 down the road, I need to map out step 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there's no other way I'm going to take step 5. And then there's folks like yourself. And to be honest, I fall a little into your
Closer
world
to you.
too.
Yeah.
And so for me, as you're talking, I'm like, okay, you're saying that at no point really through those formative years were you allowing those years to dictate exactly what the next step was going to be. You were actually so immersed in those times that you allow the experience to actually dictate your future.
100%.
You know, and that's, people need to hear that.
100%.
Because people are hearing and reading books saying that, no, plan it, know it. And it's like, or not.
Man, those guys are just hawking books, bro.
But it's fascinating to me, man. It's fascinating that you were so comfortable knowing that. But something that has also come through here, which I'd love to talk to a little bit, is your ability to just notice when it's the right time to then make a step. Because again, it's one thing to be in the experience, but then to actually acknowledge, let's say, for instance, in that evening, this gentleman comes to you, it says cancer free, and then for you to sort of go, well, wait a second, this is now bigger than what I thought this initial idea was. What is it that's always giving you the courage, the mindset, whatever it may be, to just say, this is where I need to go, now go do?
Let me try and reframe the question. Or like,
Yeah.
what about how I think about a situation where it's worth pursuing? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
How do I think about
what is
that?
it? Yeah, what is it that makes you say, okay, I've seen enough, or I know enough?
Yeah.
Boom, off
yeah,
I go.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have tons of terrible ideas. Some are just awful.
Mm-hmm.
So there is discernment. You got to have discernment.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think I have decent discernment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, to me, it's this is where it gets into a little bit of a beautiful art and craft of like, the stakes were really low when I was a kid. You know, I had way more. There was no downside. Like, there's an interesting part of being young, you know, I know we can all start at any time, but when you're 20, like, the stakes are not super high to go try a thing. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Right.
So I think I use that mindset a lot now that I'm in my 40s. And yeah, that Mary Beth was a much different financial commitment, planning commitment. But I had Son of a Ghost, which is my next thing, was a idea that just kept for about 10 years, just kept coming into my consciousness.
Yeah.
So there's also a little bit of like feel, for me at least, where if it's something that just keeps nagging at you, at some point the opportunity will arise for you to what you would like, your discernment and your feel. And for me, there just becomes it's a requirement. It just starts to feel required. And what is interesting for at least Son of a Ghost and the Mary Beth, I had bought the buildings. I was going to do these. I always wanted historic buildings in New Orleans, and it just the Son of a Ghost thing was not a part of the building structure. Like, that was not. They were two different things, and then they just started to appear together when it was like, all right. My business partner said, hey man, what do you want? How do you want to design? We didn't have a name. We were just building these buildings out. And he's like, we got to get a designer. And what do you want to do with art? And it just, boom, I'll never forget, on the call, Bo Bodier, we're on this call. And I was like, bro, oh my God, I have this idea. My mom was this crazy, brilliant artist. She's left behind all this work. We still have it. I've been wanting to like collaborate with her from beyond the grave. And this dude's an engineer. And he was like, I'm like the marketing side. Right. He's like, okay. So okay. I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds cool. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And so that's how, you know.
Yeah.
And so what is interesting to me now looking back of like, who knows if the requirement would have ever arisen for Son of a Ghost. Mm-hmm. But there are things in our lives that then just feel like, no, you got to just show up and punch the ticket.
Yeah.
And that was the moment for me, right? Yep. We had to put art on the wall. We had to open these buildings.
Right.
We had a banknote. And I was like, bet, here it is. I got to do it now.
Yep.
Also, deadlines really help. When I can get stuck in the ephemeral a lot.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful for me too, which is like, stakes.
Yep.
Table stakes are important to get anything done.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense because I'm so glad you brought the stakes back up again because you mentioned stakes earlier. I made a note and then I circled it just now because I wanted to come to that. Is that what I'm hearing is that when you get the stakes clear, you get them right, and they feel like they align. Obviously, stakes means pressure, chaos, so whatever it may be, opportunities, all these
timeliness,
different things.
Yeah.
Right, but when we get the stakes right and we sit in those stakes for long enough, at a certain point, we get comfortable with them, comfortable enough to maybe act.
Kind of what I'm hearing. You get a little bit past like not wanting to throw up every day.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it becomes a requirement.
Right. About the day after, like not wanting to throw up is when you should.
That's about it. It's like, I don't feel nauseous from the idea of the magnitude of this anymore.
Exactly.
Maybe the magnitude isn't quite what I thought.
Yeah.
But it's important. I love that you brought it up because for me, I talk about it a lot in my work now. Is it something that gets lost a lot of the time when we have goal settings and things like that? Is that what are the stakes? Like anyone really can have a goal. Anybody can put something out to the world and say, hey, this seems like a great idea. I want to go do this. Typically, the action part, the follow through, if we don't find strong enough stakes, the follow through rarely is consistent.
Of course.
You know, but that's what I love about what you've spoken through here, and I think people can appreciate is anyone can listen to this and say, oh, this guy did it. Why can't me? And it's just like, all right, well, that's true. But can you create and form the stakes around whatever it is that you want to go and actually achieve? I'm curious, when you say stakes, can you give me an example? Like, so what might have been one of the stakes that kind of always stood out to you that it's like, hey, this is on the line. Like, if I do this, this is on the line.
Man, this one feels like a really, it's almost like philosophical for me.
Yeah.
Because you can have like punitive stakes, right? Like if we're betting,
sure,
there's a monetary, which is kind of artificial, but real currency. So, so I think financial stakes, upside and downside.
Yep.
I think our most valuable currency is time. Stakes in terms of time. Will this buy me more time? Will this give me a life that I desire? So like that feels like an important one. I can't really name if it's a stake, but it's an ingredient.
Definitely.
I got like a just weird chip on my shoulder too, though. Like stakes of like, nah, man. I know you don't think the collective view. I'm not like calling out, but like I love being an underdog.
Yeah.
I love people being like, I love my accountant friends and my teacher friends being like, one of my teacher friends is like, bro, you always got a couch when you go bankrupt. Like, you know, he's like, it's a fun, but he's like, I can't believe you're still
doing this.
At it.
Yeah. Still at it.
And we've been joking about, I have a couch whenever like once
it gets like 15, 16 years, it's like,
yeah, but he's still like, you're why he's couch like, still here. You know, just know it's still here. And that, he's playful.
Sure.
But every good joke has a little truth to it. Like,
no doubt.
I am of our friends, the one that in the group chat is like, of course, Fogarty said, let's go tonight.
Right. Let's go do it right now.
What do you mean plan at 6 months?
Right.
There's a direct flight. Let's go now.
Right.
You know, I am that.
You're that guy.
Agitator.
Right.
And so those feel like the proving wrong, or well, I guess the stake of, in my life, living a really difficult thing that I had to learn is like, my first fidelity is to myself and my heart. And like, I can be, like many high achievers, very hard on myself. And part of that, though, there's a beauty in like wanting to be excellent, and an internal drive to be excellent.
Yep.
And those stakes, those are like an internal stake. It's like, whatever. But the big ones, you're like, yeah, man, let's go.
Right. It's the world I operate in. It's the world I thrive in.
And
it's the world
fun,
I live in.
you know?
It is fun. But it's not. And again, I think what I love about everything you're saying here is you're finding a beautiful way to align it with who you are. And I think that this is not you proclaiming to the world everyone must be and should be and aspire to be this way. That's not what, it's not coming across like that at all. What I think it needs to be reemphasized here is that I think everyone has a version of this. Sometimes if a lot of people are scared of this part of themselves, it's like, wait, I want to be excellent at something. Wait, there's a stake that comes with that. Wait, there may be some loss that comes with that if I go for it. Loss of what I have right now, loss of what I go for and don't attain. And yet I actually really just can't help but relate with this notion of it. Just, there's something about the temptation of excellence you just can't ignore.
Powerful drug, man.
It is, right? It is a drug. I think that's a great way of putting it. Powerful drug. Yeah. How do you respond when you get a taste of it?
Oh my God, it's really good, man. And it's a powerful drug, and it's a dangerous drug, man.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous drug, and I think that I have made many mistakes. I've hurt people. I have taken no prisoners, as a metaphor, in ways that I look back on that, you know, I've made peace with those. And I just truly now try and make sure, even when I'm like, put me in, coach, give me the shot. Like afterwards, I try not and be the guy who talks in third person, that like, who is just not fun to be around.
Right.
Because I was that person for a while, and it was, and I just look back and be like, God damn, you're not important. I'm not important. I'm not special in that. Like when you are carrying yourself, like it's just not a fun way to move through life. And I moved through life like that. What I would call my first era, like when I started to get really successful, like, and I didn't even realize that I was turning into someone that I wouldn't want to hang out with.
Right. But
that's now for me, like super important, like checking in with myself, checking in with my team, because also there is a certain amount of like unhealthy confidence that you have to get on a stage in front of 4,000 people when you aren't famous. Like Matthew McConaughey, if you remember, came in right after me. And frankly, Matthew, I think I busted his ass.
I think you
and the reviews and we got reviews afterwards saying like we came from McConaughey and stayed for the Dear World guy.
That's right.
Which was like cool, man. It was cool to like, but that's an like I need to be ready to take the shot.
Yeah.
But then you got to just come back down to earth, man.
That's right.
Does that make like so?
It makes so much sense.
It's been really hard for me to balance that because I love the drug, man. I love artists. I love it.
Yeah.
So it is something, if power and influence left unchecked, is absolutely destructive. And we know that.
We know that. We still fall for that.
We all fall. I mean, I think the best people I've ever, the most well-adjusted people I know can have these can say, I have caused harm. I have fucked up. But I've done a lot of good stuff too. And like, I'm just going to I like myself. I love myself, and took me a long time to be able to actually say that with truth.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you for sharing.
And I can see people. That's what I love. I can see people who I know really love themselves.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of very successful people who don't like themselves.
It's true. And even when even in a moment where you had the chance to speak of yourself in third person, you still humbled yourself by being the dear world guy. You didn't even reference yourself by your name. I love it.
Well, you know what's funny? We're like a practitioners of story. Mm-hmm. I think the internet zeitgeist has used the third person you in a way that has actually created a weird thing where it is a lot of proclamation. Mm-hmm. So I try and stay. I'm like, well, you just gotta get in the game. Like if you'll notice, I try and be like, I hurt people. Not, well, you just hurt people in entrepreneurship. There's a lot of guys who would sit at this thing and just stay in this like proverbial you.
Keep himself at a distance.
Well, it's also like we're in this kind of like weird thing where motivational speaker, I get there's a framing and a context.
Yeah.
When you're trying to motivate others where you want to use the collective you, but I think we're using it a lot lately to actually distance ourselves.
That's right.
From difficult conversations.
So,
because it's safer to be in the like, well, Steve, like,
when you
people got to raise a bunch of money, people get hurt,
right.
people like, it's how it goes.
Yeah.
You got to just go, you got to just move on. It's safer to stay out instead of like.
But it's the same with the relationship with growth. Like, that's what I love about a discussion like this, is that we've referenced growth a little bit as we've gone through this, but everything that's brought us to this point now comes back to a commitment to growth and understanding of growth. And part of the growth journey is to own the growth. And you're talking like when we don't define growth, when we keep when we don't own growth, we keep growth at an arm's length, and we allow ourselves to almost give ourselves the out of this, like, oh, I didn't work out, it's okay.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't really want it that badly. Yeah. But what you're saying here is that as you're speaking to your story and you're talking in the I, and again, you did very much so do that when you spoke on stage when I saw you, is just like to understand on a deeper level, like when we take ownership in the words that we say and the way that we are, the way that we act, these scary things like growth, these big goals, like you're so much more willing to take ownership.
Yeah, and they become more real. They become more visceral.
Yeah.
It's funny that I'm now. So one thing that we are actually the poet. Remember the poet. We just interviewed a poet on the street in Jackson Square, and she's like, "Why do you do this work? Why do you do this storytelling? Why do you do this work? Why is story?" And it's becoming more and more clear to me that the story I tell myself about myself to myself it's a leading indicator on my health, my well-being, my friendships. The story I tell to myself about myself, I'm now almost willing to be evangelical. It's the only story that fucking matters.
Right.
It is the only story that matters. And it took me a long time to admit the story I was telling myself was a lie. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to look myself in a mirror and say, I must face my shortcomings, my fears, my absolute willingness to do anything I could to gain love, be loved, even when it was outside of what I really wanted. Mm-hmm. Like when I was lying to myself, I thought like I could die. Like lies can kill people. Like stress, heart attacks, anxiety. And that was where I started to realize I was hiding in other people's stories by being the one to ask, by being the curious one.
Yeah.
And so this next phase of my work is really trying to, I don't want to say like but I'm becoming evangelical about how we talk to ourselves, and the story of our own lives is a leading indicator of our health, our happiness, and our wellness. And a lot of people are stuck in their head with a story that isn't true, and one that need not is also one they can change by reframing it, by thinking about it differently, by therapy or coaching or medication or working out. Because, yeah, man, it's the only story that matters.
Yeah. It's ironic that we're living in a time where one's ability to tell a story has never been greater, and yet we've never been so bad at that.
I think there's a big difference between, and I think this is going to get into the weeds a little bit, right? Like, what is a story?
Yeah.
In what function? What is the function of this? I think is much different than like, what is the internal story of the story if I'm the movie character in my life?
Right.
What archetype am I?
Yeah.
Am I the thoughtful little brother? Am I the villain? Am I the hero? And I think a lot of like that is where we're moving in our work to help others just get the basics of this idea of like, and then so you're the director too. You can rewrite that script. Because that first draft sucks when you're the villain and you can't get out of bed, or like that draft. We can edit that.
Yeah, we can edit it. Yeah.
So what do you need to do to edit it? Make him like my dad's an alcoholic. He's fine with me talking. Like he's been in AA for 40 years and he works the program. He's been sober 40 years and he still has a bunch of curmudgeon old lawyers in Omaha, Nebraska. They get together every week and they work this program. Yep. And he's just taught me a lot through that process of like, there's a lot of these, none of these things in our zeitgeist are totally new or original. They're just whatever happens to work for you to get through this thing. Religion, faith, therapy, coaching, working out, whatever it is, they're all, to me, I think they're all from this thing that now I am starting to realize is starts and begins and ends with you're going out. You came in alone, you're going out alone. And so you're experiencing this moment totally differently than I am, even though we're having an experience together.
Yeah.
And so it's just so cool for me and fascinating for me to listen to how people see themselves in their own story, and how many people I just ache for of just like, God, baby, we can get you through. Like it doesn't need to be that.
It's so important, man. And we're going to get to the work you're doing now, because this is a great transition to it. But I got to say, while we're on this, like, firstly, the more we have conversations about the fact that we are our greatest storyteller, the better.
Absolutely.
The better. We need to have those conversations. Again, I am now 8 years, I want to say, into therapy. And it's been a long time since therapy has been this outlet for me to sort of survive. I'm far past survival at this point. Now therapy is my maintenance. It's my drive. It's my checkpoints. It's all this kind of stuff. It's allowed me to actually see this version of the human being, which I now call in my work the optimal self. It's like, hey, we have a version of us, turns out is really worth pursuing. But if you do a shitty job at how you talk to that person, good luck ever getting to that version of you.
Never gonna.
But it starts there. But it starts there as something as simple as just like when you're driving that car by yourself on the way home every night, and if all you're doing is going back and replaying all the hits of the mistakes you made today, versus, hey, what went well today? The version of you when you actually get out the car are two very different people.
Absolutely, man.
And
absolutely.
But I have to get to what you're doing now. I'm fascinated by it as a performance coach, as an executive coach. It's right up my alley. And so we were just chatting right before we got started, and I think what's so key here is that it's not necessarily just what you're doing, but to everything we were just talking about, it's who you're doing it for. It's people, from what I understand, and obviously I'm going to allow you to explain it more, but it sounds like you're now offering something to help those that are maybe as hard on themselves as anybody to start working on the very story that they're firstly telling of themselves to themselves, and then how they can maybe get that out better to the world. So I want to sort of throw that up to you and just love for you to explain more about that.
Yeah, well, we're at the Mary Beth. I named it after my mom. She was prolific artist. She committed suicide when I was 18. I had a very difficult relationship with her, and only in my later years as I started to be. By the way, I don't create anything without a price tag. I don't create art to survive, like, because I watched a tortured artist. Like, if she was here, she'd be like back here with Abby, like sketching us. She just had to create, man. She was like a genius in many ways that also tortured her. I believe most of our stories have characters who are close to us. They're teachers, they're friends, they're mentors, they're spouses, they're brothers, they're sisters. They are people who are in our lives, good and bad, ups and downs, who shape us and form us. In my work, there's like this idea of the servant leader and the purpose-driven leader, and most of it's PR. I work with many high, Fortune 1, very impressive people. The higher you go, the less authentic you feel. I feel that I meet very impressive people who are just scared to get knocked off the kill, because it's a kill or be killed kind of. It gets messy at the top. Yep. I'm also of the opinion that a PR press person should not be writing your talks about being a servant leader or a purpose-driven leader, of which many of them are. Yeah. Being written not by the person.
They're not making the time to do it themselves.
They're not making the time to do it. This is going to be a program that is not for every seat. This is going to be a 25 people a year max, 6 people at a time. Yep. And it's going to be, in my opinion, the program's called Letter of Your Life, Loyal. It will be for executives who actually want to do the hard work of getting a story they can share from the stage or their own personal brand, all these kind of things that people are being asked to do. I think society is yearning for our leaders to be more, and it's just hard for a lot of them to take the pill. And so I built the Mary Beth because New Orleans is a city of stories. I wanted to have a piece of New Orleans. I purchased these buildings with the idea of they were going to be a Deer World retreat center. It had a much different floor plan, and then the pandemic hit. Long story, but I ended up backing my way into this, oh my God, like the best thing ever, which is I have this hotel named after my mom. I have this collaboration with her where I've been very kind of hard on sleeve, man. Like Hemingway says, writing's easy, man. You just put a knife in your veins and write, use the blood. Right. And that's kind of what this place has been, and it's a program where the deliverable is these leaders will leave on the other side with a first person narrative story about who they are, what makes them tick, that we will also polish up nicely for if it needs to be for a stage or if it just needs to be for a recruitment pitch or whatever, like why, and everyone will get it. It's a 3-day program, but it's a 360 in advance. We're making our own 360 with an organizational psychologist that on night 1 their 360 will be revealed to them by their writing partner, and then we're going to go hard on individual and collective story writing over 3 days. And then I love this too, like the last night I'll be in this room, all 6 will get up. Now imagine it's not just 6 people, it's 6 writing partners, and it's 6 plus ones. Spouses, brothers. So there's 18 people in the room, but 6 storytellers. Right. They'll do their first draft of their letter of their life, right? This it's all based on eulogy. In journalism school, we had to write our own obituary. Yeah. Randy Pausch wrote a book called The Last Lecturer. He's a professor who died of brain cancer. So, but there's a thing, these are all kind of future intention based things. We're just putting our own little spin on it.
Right.
And then the leaders will get hourly coaching. For instance, if it is something where like the writing partner will help, because the first draft will be good, but it won't be extraordinary.
Right.
You can't do that in 3 days.
That's right.
But we're gonna do a heck of a lot in 3 days.
Right.
And then they'll stay in touch with their writing partner and coach. And my ultimate belief is that will be transformational for them, or that relationship. We will be their like purpose arbiter, once we create those. And when they're working on speeches, when they're like going through rebranding their values or their mission statements, they're going to come to us.
Yep.
So it's audacious for sure. We have, luckily though, I'm in this game. I have many, many, many leaders who've expressed like, when you're ready, send me the details. So
right.
I think we'll get it off the ground, but it's a big lift.
It's a big lift.
But we're sitting in a hotel that was vacant for 40 years and had no roofs and no walls, and took 5 years, but
right.
We're
so in comparison to that,
we're not getting rained on. Yeah,
it's
way less. Yes. Way less. Now I gotta, and we're gonna do the first one in January.
Yeah.
And I have some early takers.
There you go.
Who are kind of first evangelists. So it'll be another word of mouth.
Yep.
And I'm hoping, I just want it to feel like, no, man, you can't just like pay to get into this thing. It's he only does them 4 times a year.
Right.
And it's 5 years from now, it's going to be like,
yeah,
hopefully 100 people on the waiting list.
Waiting list.
Like, got to apply. It's like,
that's right.
Nah, let me talk to your wife real quick. Let me talk to your husband. Like,
right.
You don't get to apply.
Right.
Who's your +1? And I'm going to talk to them. Are they ready? Are they willing? Because we can't waste our time
right.
with very shiny people anymore. I just really am also, I don't want to be around. And I don't mean shiny. I love shiny people. I don't like shiny people who don't realize that they could be so much more than shiny. Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of very powerful people who I just don't really like to be around anymore. Yeah. I'm lucky now that I don't have
necessarily have to.
I don't have to be anymore.
Right.
Because for a long time, I had to take every check that came.
Yep.
And I learned a lot, though. I've watched guys clear rooms for keynotes because they're so nervous that their staff is going to watch them struggle in their rehearsals. Do you know that like all your staff have to be doing things? Like you're stopping the servers from like putting the silverware. Like, dude, mate, I was like, this dude cleared the room for a tech rehearsal. I was like, how self-absorbed must one be? And I watched it happen. It was this really funny moment of like, I also don't know what it's like to be at the top. I mean, I'm talking top, like heads of banks, governors, I mean, I get it. It's a really tough role. And I also should just pull back a little bit of like, when you've not been in that situation, I shouldn't talk shit. And yet still, I just found that to be like this weird paradox. Yeah. Because some of those guys are out there calling themselves servant leaders too. It's like, wait, how does that work? Right.
Push people away. Right.
And I think we're in a really funny, weird zeitgeist of like the purpose and why and authenticity and like, what's your story? And I'm just like, oh God, I love it that it's a thing. And it's also like, whew.
We need to give it some guardrails, right? We need to give it a little bit of.
That's what I feel, man. Right. I feel that for sure.
But I wanted something that is just coming across in abundance is the need for what it is you're now providing through this work. You've created the platform to do it. You've literally created the hotel to bring the people to. And I think at this point, something that needs to be emphasized to everyone listening is that you have found a way to go on this journey, make it your journey, figure out a way to grow on your terms. But at no point have you, even in those moments where you notice, hey, I'm getting a little bit too big for my boots and all that kind of thing. You've been able to actually utilize what's around you. You've had the smarts to be able to say, hey, I've got enough people around me that can bring me down, not bring me down, but bring me back down to earth if I need to be, and not push those kind of people away. And it's allowed you just to kind of see opportunities for what they are. And you've not, it doesn't sound like, I know you joked before, you've had a lot of bad ideas, as we all have, but it doesn't sound as though you've allowed yourself to sort of step somewhere unwillingly. You've always stepped with a great deal of willingness.
Sure.
And you felt the support to do that in the process.
I feel really blessed. And the next phase of our business may be the hardest one for me to do. I've been able to do all this without venture capital, without a board. I own 100% of the business. I have a foundation now. The next big thing feels the stakes are starting to feel really big again.
Yeah.
Like we're doing an executive retreat right now with my who I would bet the farm on. Mm-hmm. And it feels big. And it also feels like the amount of it's like new conversations that I am now willingly going into a thing that I've never had to answer to anybody. Mm-hmm. But when you take people's money, it's a different thing. And I'm wrestling with, if I do, I will be 100% in on this is just the next chapter of me growing into something, a new skill set, a new way of collaborating, a new thing. And also, like, the building, this is my first, actually, I'm 50-50, 51-49 with my business partner. So I've got a few years under my belt now of being able to have stakes, real stakes with another human being, which I just haven't had at Dear World.
Right.
And so actually the next version of Dear World might actually involve a recapitalization, board of directors, equity, share, all these kind of things that I haven't really had to think about. Yeah. But for the thing I think we can do, we're going to need to put some gas on the fire. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that's scary to me, man, because that's a huge, and that's a massive change in mindset.
Yep.
From a reasonably beautiful small business, great lifestyle business, cool staff, young staff, a little older, kind of good mix, but not hundreds of employees. Mm-hmm. I got like 5 employees and like another 10 preferred vendors who are producers. Yeah. It's a night.
You're talking about stakeholders, like, and that's again. There's that word stake, right? There it is again.
The stakes. This one feels like
this is real. Like,
and it feels fun though. You know what?
Yeah.
That's it. The discernment for me, and what we're talking about is like and they're downstairs right now, strategic planning this move, and we're up here, and I trust them that they are planning our next moves, and they're really smart.
Yeah. That's all that matters. You got people you trust. You got people that.
And it's all these kind of things that I'm not great at. You don't want me in the spreadsheet.
Right.
You don't want me. You want me out through the front door, saying who do you want me to go have dinner with, and say like you want to be a part of this thing.
Right.
You don't want me. You don't want me in the spreadsheet.
No. Well,
and I don't want to be in the spreadsheet, frankly.
And that's, again, man, like, just bringing this to a close. Like, I am just truly amazed at the through line throughout your journey of that ability just to be self-aware, like just to be able to notice it. Obviously, you've had a couple of moments where you probably wish you were more self-aware, maybe more than a couple, and that's all of us. However, at the heart of the growth mindset is something that we've actually discussed in some recent episodes, is around that appetite to learn, and then from those lessons to actually grow. And it comes through in abundance. And I'm just curious, let's say there's an X out there right now. There's the next Robert Fogarty who's listening to this and saying, okay, I've got the idea, I've got the vision, I'm feeling pretty good about who I am. Is there anything? Is there that one little piece? Is there that one thing that they need to know going into any big step that you would be able to tell that 26, 27-year-old version of yourself maybe?
Well, I think the discernment of knowing if you're a collaborator or if you're a like assassin, like a lone wolf or collaborators are, I think, a big one. I think a lot of people are actually would be more successful faster if they didn't get a bunch of co-founders and they didn't, So that would be my first is like tactically.
Go at it.
Some people will be like, no, the thing is big and but there's a lot of businesses out there that like you will grow it faster if you're the lone, like we get stuck in decision paralysis when you add another human being.
Right.
But when you're at the top and you have advisors and whatever, but that comes with more risk. You got to put up more of whatever that business is. Yeah. So I think if I were talking, that would be my first. It's actually funny. It's not in the clouds. It's very tactical. It's very tactical on this idea of like, how do I want to get this thing off the ground? And there's pros and cons to both. Yeah. I just know that I realize about myself, man. I love being at the top. I love it. Put me in, coach. Let me. And I just and I also, all of my ideas they haven't been in product lines that existed, so I also had this little chip. Yep. It was like, everyone thinks I'm crazy anyway. They're not going to give me so I need to just have to go all in on this is the thing and I'm going to will it to happen. Yeah. So I think that's an interesting one to think about. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it beautifully ties in some of the themes that we've had throughout the conversation. It's just like that ability to, you can even go right back to the very first thing, head on a swivel, curious individual. Like, do you have a head on a swivel? Are you curious? You have an appetite to learn? Do you have the appetite to grow and see and discover? But at the same time, can you work on that ability to speak to yourself, tell yourself the kind of stories that allow you to become your own coach, but allow you to make these decisions, like you're saying, clearly with an ability to know, like, I trust my judgment in this moment. And it's not just about because I read this, because someone told me this. You're actually in the driver's seat. Yeah. I'm hearing that part of this loud and clear. And
I also think, and just to end on this idea though, like, right, like we all need people. Like you can't be, but quite fundamentally, you can have advisors who don't have their money on the line. You can have the difference between starting something with we're going to go 33%. You don't need to be all owners, and the lone wolf can still be surrounded. They're never going to do it alone.
That's right.
I think that's an important.
It's very important. And again, you're talking about a community, right? I mean, it's just like having that
community. You're never going to do it alone. And I think there's a lot of people though that like, no, they want to do it 30.
Yep.
Because that's the way they go forward. But it's really fun to think about that. Yep. I know you probably asked that. What would you tell? I'm really glad I had an opportunity very early to bring on some co-founders and those kind of things. I'm glad I just went at it alone,
Yep. No, I love it. And obviously we're going to have every piece of information we need to share in the show notes about you. But if there's something that, as people are listening, as we close off here, man, like where's the best place that we can learn all about we need to learn?
Just deerworld.com, like Deer World like a letter, not Deer World like a hunting magazine. And I also got to shout you out, bro. Like really strong interviewer. I really love your cadence. Do you have a speech coach?
I don't. I'm a communication major, former theater boy too.
So, former theater, because your cadence and it's just really strong. Me, I'm kind of like a valley girl. I struggle with your nose and likes. You're over here just dropping dimes. Like, tell me about just perfect, bro.
Point guard. I'm point guarding.
I love it, man.
I appreciate the props. I do, and I appreciate your time, your generosity of having us in your hotel, man. It's beautiful. It's so as someone who's lived in Louisiana now for 12, 13 years. I will be doing my utmost to keep bringing more attention to this place. I'd love to have you here. I appreciate it.
Come through. We'll get the friends and family discount code.
Well, there you go. My wife doesn't need any more encouragement to travel, so I think you've already got
little staycation at the Marriott Bed.
Little staycation. Robert, appreciate the time, my man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
So thankful to have Robert and join the show, and quite frankly, it was worth the wait in terms of him and I finally getting together and meeting at the Mary Beth Hotel. And something that I just wanted to really emphasize to you all on the way out of this episode very quickly is just the importance of stakes and being aware of them, in the sense of, are you operating with stakes? And if you're not, there's a chance that you're maybe not pushing yourself enough. But sometimes we need to just simply become aware of some great stakes that we are operating with that we're maybe not acknowledging, because some of that pressure can be put on ourselves sometimes in a way where we're not even aware that we're doing it. So to simply identify the stakes, the magnitude at which you are asking and demanding for optimal performance from yourself, or maybe just simply acknowledging the cost of not being able to deliver on whatever it is that you're trying to deliver upon. Again, we can be guilty of both ends of the spectrum, not taking stakes seriously enough when the stakes are huge, massively overcompensating for what the stakes actually are when they're really not significant at all, and everything in between. And so, are you aware of the stakes within your world, and are you actually defining them and getting clear enough on them to where you are becoming assured with the stakes that you are operating around? So just appreciate Robert highlighting that. He highlighted so many different things, and cannot encourage you enough just to simply go and check out Dear World, because it's a phenomenal movement. And if you can find a way to make Robert and Dear World part of an event that you have coming up within your organization, locally, whatever it may be soon, I cannot encourage it enough. He's super impactful and super good at what he does. But for the meantime, hey guys, appreciate you tuning in. GrowthReady is so well on its way at this point. And if you're new to the show, that's fine. You should definitely go back and check out some of our recent episodes and a whole bunch of old episodes too, which previously would have been titled Career Competitor. So if you're hearing that when you tune into the episode, it's no big deal. That just happens to be what the show used to be called. But for now, best of luck with anything and everything you've got going on in your world. And I look forward to doing this again with you guys very soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Growth Ready. If you liked what you heard and are feeling ready to grow, be sure to leave a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share the episode with someone you know is ready to fuel their growth journey today. We love our community, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at podcast@growthready.com. And until next time, we are Growth Ready, and you will be too.